welcome to our discussion. Today, we're opening up what is really an ancient masterclass in, I think, psychological and spiritual endurance. We're looking at King David's counsel in Psalm 37.
And our source material for this is just so rich. We're drawing heavily on the analysis of the "You Need Faith in Jesus" team.
Yes, and our mission here is really singular. It's to extract the actionable, the unshakable truths that you need to live righteously in a world that, well, often seems to reward the unrighteous.
And that is probably the most essential topic we could tackle, because Psalm 37 grapples directly with that core challenge of faith.
The problem of justice.
The problem of temporal justice, exactly. It addresses that frustration, that feeling every believer has when they look around and see, the wicked prospering.
Schemers getting ahead.
Right, and the honest person struggling. And David, he doesn't give a dry philosophical answer here. He offers practical, immediate instruction.
And it's all centered on two things, really.
Two core principles. Radical patience and an absolute trust in God's sovereignty. It's a roadmap for inner stability.
And understanding the context is so key. The "You Need Faith in Jesus" team analysis really highlights this. Psalm 37 sits in Book 1 of the Psalter.
Which is mostly attributed to David.
Right, but it stands apart. It's not a typical lament or a praise song. It's a wisdom psalm.
Yes, it's designed for instruction, not for a big temple liturgy, but for personal, ongoing instruction in how to live a godly life.
And that instructional purpose is, well, it's literally built into the structure of the poem itself.
It is. The "You Need Faith in Jesus" team points out that in the original Hebrew, Psalm 37 is an acrostic.
So each new section of verses starts with the next letter of the Hebrew alphabet.
Exactly. And that literary device signals two things. First, it implies completeness, that David is giving a comprehensive A to Z view on the topic.
And second,
memorability. This counsel was meant to be internalized, recited. It was meant to be integrated into the very mindset of the faithful.
So if it was designed to be internalized, that's how we need to treat it. Our task today is to move, really, verse by verse, unpacking David's commands, analyzing his promises.
And providing those specific, actionable steps.
Right, so that when you see some apparent injustice tomorrow morning, you have a blueprint for how to respond spiritually, emotionally, and, practically.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so we begin immediately with the negative command. The thing David tells us not to do, which is so often the thing we feel most tempted to do.
Yes.
It tackles that universal temptation to worry. David issues this strong, clear directive in the King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 1.
Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity.
That opening line, it's like a spiritual lightning rod, isn't it? It just goes right for the two major emotional traps that the success of the wicked sets for us.
It does. Fretting and envy.
We want justice now, and when it doesn't come, we self-implode into fretting, or we look outward and implode into envy.
Let's break down that word fret. To us today, fretting sounds kind of mild, like you're just a little annoyed or worried. But the original Hebrew word, chara, is so much more severe. It means to heat oneself up, to burn with anger, or to be inflamed.
Wow.
It's a profound internal agitation. The analysis of the "You Need Faith in Jesus" team often calls it a self-consuming fire. When you fret, you are literally destroying your own inner peace.
And crucially, that fire doesn't hurt the evildoer one bit.
Not at all. It only burns the person who's hosting it.
That distinction is just vital. It forces you to realize that fretting is pointless, it's self-destructive, and envy, well, envy just feeds off that heat, doesn't it?
It's the natural next step. If I'm internally burning with this agitation, I look at the wicked person's success, their money, their apparent freedom from any consequences, and I start desiring what they have.
You forget the corruption that's underneath it all.
You do. It's a discontentment that's born from a complete lack of perspective.
And that lack of perspective is precisely what David corrects. Immediately.
Yes, because both fretting and envy, they operate on a very short time horizon. They assume that what you see right now is permanent.
And David counters this with a powerful agrarian analogy in King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 2.
For they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb.
This imagery would have been so vivid for David's original audience.
Incredibly. Think about a Mediterranean climate. In the spring, after the rains, the grass just explodes. It looks lush, thick, seemingly indestructible.
But the dry season always follows.
Always. And when that intense, scorching sun, which is often a symbol of divine judgment or just inevitable consequence, when it hits that grass, which has really shallow roots, it just withers. It becomes brittle in a matter of hours.
So to the ancient mind, that wasn't a slow decay. It was a shocking, quick collapse.
Exactly. The success of the ungodly is basically theater. It looks vibrant, but it's fundamentally lacking a deep, sustaining root system. It's on a countdown clock.
And this connects so perfectly to the New Testament, doesn't it?
It does. You see similar imagery in James chapter 1, verse 11, where the rich man shall fade away in his ways, just like a withering flower.
The message is consistent.
Completely. Worldly success that's disconnected from God is transient. It lacks any eternal value. So why would you waste your emotional energy, your internal fire fretting, over something that's about to disappear anyway?
Okay, but that's where the challenge comes in for us, I think. We live in the moment. We see the person getting the unfair promotion this week. So how do we bridge that gap between the immediate, sometimes painful injustice we see and the long-term certainty of what David is prophesying?
We have to actively impose the eternal perspective onto our temporal reality. The moment you feel that heat of kara, that agitation, you have to intentionally recite this truth. Their success is shallow-rooted grass.
The "you need faith in Jesus" team really emphasizes that, don't they? That this is a conscious act, a kind of spiritual warfare against doubt.
It is. The wicked's current prosperity is completely irrelevant when you compare it to the promised inheritance of the righteous.
So the first practical step from these opening verses is a disciplined internal check. When you feel that hot sting of envy or that pull of agitation, you pause. You refuse to let that bitterness take root.
Because you know with absolute certainty that the very thing you are envying is already marked for collapse. You're choosing to stand on the rock, not in the field of dying grass.
Okay, so after establishing that negative command, what to avoid, David immediately moves to the active antidote.
Yes, and the instruction provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team points out that he gives this really comprehensive four-part structure for righteous living.
It's not just about avoiding sin.
No, it's about vigorously pursuing godliness.
Let's introduce the first two pillars. They're intrinsically linked, and they're right there in the first half of King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 3.
Trust in the Lord and do good.
This just immediately defeats any idea of a passive faith. You can't just intellectualize trust. David demands that it has to be dynamic.
It has to translate into visible, consistent, good action.
So how does doing good become inseparable from trust here?
Well, think of it this way. Trust is your internal confidence. Doing good is the external proof of that confidence.
Okay.
If I genuinely trust God to handle my provision, my justice, my future, then I'm freed from the need to scheme or to cheat or to protect myself at all costs.
Which means you can focus on other things.
You can focus entirely on serving others and acting righteously, even when it seems inefficient or costly in the short term. The two are in a feedback loop. My good actions reinforce my trust, and my trust enables my good actions.
That's a really important corrective. If I'm secretly cutting corners to get ahead, I am, by definition, demonstrating a lack of trust in God's ability to provide.
Precisely. And that righteous action leads directly into the third pillar, which is the immediate promise of security, found in the second half of that same verse, King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 3.
So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed.
This is a promise that's really tailored for a covenant people who worried about stability. David assures us God provides for the most basic, fundamental necessities, security to dwell in the land, and provision.
And he emphasizes it with that adverb, verily.
Verily thou shalt be fed. It's confident, the contract is clear, you demonstrate consistent trust and action, and God guarantees your fundamental existence and sustenance.
It grounds all this spiritual instruction in physical reality. God actually cares about us having shelter and food. But then David introduces the fourth pillar, and this elevates the discussion from mere existence to spiritual fulfillment. It's in King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 4.
Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart.
This verse is quoted so often, but it's also misunderstood so often.
Yeah,
We really need to unpack that word, delight.
we do.
If I'm fretting about someone else's success, how do I pivot from that to finding genuine satisfaction and joy in God himself? What does that even mean?
The Hebrew concept here for delight, a nag, implies taking a soft, exquisite pleasure in something. It means cultivating a taste for God.
Cultivating a taste for God. I like that.
It's moving past mere duty or obligation and finding ultimate soul-deep satisfaction in his character, his presence, his ways. It means that the relationship is the reward, independent of whatever is happening around you.
So you're not delighting for the desires.
No, you are delighting in the Lord.
Which brings us right to that common misconception. The idea that this verse is a spiritual blank check. If I just pray enough and feel delighted enough, God will grant me the new house or the promotion I crave.
And that interpretation completely misses the profound spiritual mechanism at work here, which the You Need Faith in Jesus team consistently clarifies.
Which is what?
When God truly becomes your ultimate satisfaction, your ultimate delight, two powerful things happen. First, he radically realigns your internal compass. He systematically begins to cleanse your desires of selfishness, of vanity, of earthly ambition,
And replaces them.
and replaces them with longings that are congruent with his perfect will.
So if I truly delight in God, I stop wanting the things that are ultimately shallow. I start craving holiness, service, wisdom, fellowship.
Exactly. And then the second part of the promise kicks in. When your heart is perfectly aligned, when your deepest longings are actually God's desires for you, then he fulfills them.
So he's not just granting selfish wishes.
No, he's changing who you are, and then he fulfills the desires of that new creation because those desires are now aimed toward his glory and your true flourishing.
That reframes the responsibility entirely. It's not about trying to manipulate God through forced delight. It's about surrendering my desires to him so they can be purified.
Yes.
But let's be practical. What if someone is genuinely trying to do this, trying to delight in God, but they're still struggling intensely with a deeply rooted selfish desire? Is that a sign they're failing?
That's a very honest question, and I think David is addressing the ideal here, knowing that we all live in the tension of the practical. Delighting is a process. It is not a destination you achieve overnight.
So what do you do in that struggle?
If you're struggling with a selfish desire, the delight becomes the very action of bringing that desire before God and asking him, please replace this with something better.
So it's the intentional movement toward him.
Yes, even when the emotion isn't fully there yet, it's acknowledging, Lord, I want to want you more than I want this other thing.
This connects so well to the New Testament call to prioritize the kingdom. Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you.
David is essentially giving the prerequisite for seeking the kingdom, finding your pleasure in the king himself.
So the practical application here, as the source instruction emphasizes, is active cultivation.
You can't wait for delight to just hit you spontaneously.
No, you have to intentionally cultivate it through consistent spiritual disciplines.
Right. Prayer that focuses on God's character, not just your needs. Worship that shifts your focus off your circumstances. Deep engagement with Scripture. That intentional effort is the foundation of a fulfilled life.
Okay, so we're transitioning now from that inward orientation of delight to the outward necessity of surrender.
And this is often the hardest spiritual muscle to exercise.
Giving up control of our timelines, our outcomes. This act of commitment is so foundational, and the You Need Faith in Jesus team often points to this section when they analyze the Psalms of trust. Let's look at King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 5.
Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass.
That phrase, commit thy way, it just carries so much weight. What is the imagery David is evoking with that word commit?
The Hebrew word here is galal. It literally means to roll or to roll off.
So it's a physical image.
A very powerful one. Imagine you're carrying a burden, a worry, a life plan, an anxiety about the future that is literally crushing you. The command is a deliberate muscular action. Take that heavy load and roll it onto the Lord.
It's a decisive surrender.
It's taking your hands off the steering wheel entirely.
And the staggering promise attached is, he shall bring it to pass. God takes possession of that surrendered burden and actively guarantees the outcome. And this is especially crucial when we feel like our integrity is being questioned or our reputation is damaged by the wicked. David addresses that need for external affirmation in the next verse, KJV Psalm 37, verse 6.
And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday.
This is the promise of divine vindication. It makes it clear we don't have to scramble to clear our own names.
The promise is that the truth about your character, your integrity, will become undeniable, visible, as clear as the midday sun. When we're falsely accused or when the wicked seem to be winning the narrative, our job is to commit the situation to God.
He handles the PR campaign.
He handles the defense. It's perfectly encapsulated in the New Testament in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, to cast our cares on him because he cares for us. Our defender is God himself.
But the immediate temptation comes right back when the wicked keep succeeding in the meantime. We've committed our way, but the resolution hasn't appeared yet. How does David tell us to handle that excruciating waiting period?
He gives us the command to rest. In King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 7.
Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass.
Rest in the Lord. It can sound like passive resignation, can't it?
It can. If I'm truly waiting patiently, how do I know that's not just me giving up or becoming complacent?
That distinction is absolutely crucial. This is not passive resignation. It is active rest that's rooted in theological confidence.
Active rest.
It's a quiet, confident stillness that comes from the certainty that God is sovereign and liner. He's operating on a perfect timeline. The rest is internal. You stop the striving and the worry inside. The patient waiting is the external endurance that says, my God is trustworthy, even if I suffer unfairly for another 5 years.
So there's a difference between waiting while you're tapping your foot nervously and waiting while you're reading a book in quiet confidence.
Exactly. Lamentations chapter 3, verse 26 reminds us it is good to both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. Quietly waiting is a form of endurance that is itself an act of worship.
It proves you prioritize God's character over your own immediate comfort.
Right. And if we fail to achieve that quiet rest, David gives a stark warning about where that agitation leads us. It's in King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 8.
Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil.
He links anger and wrath directly to sin. If we let the injustice of the world stir up that wrath inside us, we risk retaliating, seeking revenge.
Engaging in schemes that mimic the wicked's own actions.
Yes, you essentially sacrifice your own integrity trying to force the justice that only God can deliver.
That's a devastating truth. The temptation is to use the methods of the world, manipulation, deceit, raw power, to fight worldly evil.
And David says that moment of anger and fretting is where you fall into that trap. He commands us to stop, to recognize that our wrath does not produce the righteousness of God. We have to choose the path of integrity, even when it feels like the path of weakness.
So the practical application here is a moment of conscious intervention. You have to pause before you react. You engage in that deliberate spiritual act of rolling the burden onto God, and you consciously choose to wait for his timing.
That commitment to galal and to rest is the true measure of your surrender, and it's a necessary component of the wisdom imparted by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
Okay, so now David pivots. He moves from the difficulty of our present behavior to the certainty of future outcomes.
Yes, this section is a powerful theological reassurance. It defines the inevitable end for two very distinct groups: those who persist in wickedness and those who choose patient trust.
And the contrast is immediate and absolute, right in King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 9.
For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth.
Cutoff is such a comprehensive term. It implies permanent separation from God's blessing, from community, from life itself.
It is the final, irreversible judgment. And against that darkness, the promise for the faithful just shines. They shall inherit the earth.
David reinforces the terrifying fragility of the wicked's position in the next verse. KJV, Psalm 37, verse 10. He emphasizes the speed and the totality of their disappearance.
For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be.
The implication there is profound. Their power, their prominence. It's so fleeting that if you go back to where they once stood and search diligently,
You'll find no trace, no lasting legacy, no enduring monument to their success. They just vanish, as if they were never even there.
and this emptiness, this utter lack of permanence, serves as the perfect contrast to the destiny of the righteous.
Yes, which David outlines in one of the most significant verses in all of Scripture, King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 11.
But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace.
This is a cornerstone of biblical teaching, isn't it? I mean, Jesus Christ quotes this exact verse centuries later in Matthew chapter 5 as part of the Beatitudes.
He does, and David is defining the character required for this inheritance. Meekness. But we have to challenge the modern definition here. If the wicked are powerful and aggressive, why is the answer meekness? It sounds like weakness.
And the sources, including the analysis by the You Need Faith in Jesus team, are so crucial here. Meekness, the Hebrew anoim, is not weakness. It is not timidity or passivity.
It's what?
It is power and strength brought under divine control.
Okay.
It's the refusal to use your strength for selfish gain or retaliation. Instead, you submit it entirely to God's authority. The meek person is actually strong enough to resist the temptation to fight their own battles.
So it requires immense internal strength to be truly meek. You're consciously giving up your right to vengeance and trusting God to handle it.
Precisely. And the reward for this controlled strength is twofold: the inheritance of the earth, the ultimate secure portion, and the abundance of peace, or shalom.
Which is more than just an absence of conflict.
So much more. It's total wholeness, security, completeness. It's an internal and external flourishing that the wicked, with all their temporary power, can never achieve.
But in the meantime, the wicked are still actively plotting. David addresses this in KJV, Psalm 37, verse 12. The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. That is visceral act of malice.
It shows the ongoing reality of spiritual attack. But David immediately moves to the heavenly perspective in the very next verse, KJV Psalm 37, verse 13.
The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming.
This imagery of divine derision, which is also in Psalm 2, offers immense psychological comfort. God is not intimidated, he's not panicked or caught off guard by their plotting.
He laughs.
He laughs because he sees the end game. He knows their power is utterly limited and their destruction is already certain. When we adopt God's perspective, their plotting stops being a cause for fear, and it becomes, really, a cause for pity.
And the certainty of God's justice is highlighted by the irony of their self-destruction in verses 14 and 15.
Yes. King James Version, Psalm 37, verses 14 and 15. The wicked have drawn out the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy and to slay such as be of upright conversation. Their sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken.
Their own instruments of malice turn back on them.
It's the promise of poetic justice in its purest form.
So what does that mean for us then?
It affirms God's perfect moral order. When we trust him, we don't need to fear the weapons formed against us because God has already guaranteed they will break. The "You Need Faith in Jesus" team often highlights this principle of the divine boomerang. The evil you send out will inevitably return to its sender.
Therefore, the practical mandate from this section is to cultivate meekness.
Yes. Choose non-retaliation and rest secure in the knowledge that your ultimate inheritance is guaranteed. You don't need to fight for territory that God has already promised to you.
For quiet faithfulness is your most powerful weapon.
Right. Now, moving forward, David shifts our comparison from destiny to daily life. He forces us to assess true value.
He begins with this powerful contrast between quantity and quality in King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 16.
A little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked.
Now, if you're only looking at a spreadsheet, this verse makes no sense.
None at all.
Riches are, by definition, greater than a little. But David demands we look at the source and the stability of that wealth.
Right. The little that the righteous have comes with God's unshakable blessing, peace, and integrity. The riches of the wicked are tainted by corruption, anxiety, and ultimate instability. One is temporary and chaotic. The other is small but secure.
And that instability is clarified immediately in the next verse, KJV Psalm 37, verse 17.
For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholdeth the righteous.
The arms there, they symbolize the wicked self-reliance, right? Their ability to strive and manipulate and acquire wealth through their own strength.
And God promises to break that self-reliance. It renders all their efforts futile in the long run. But the righteous, they have a divine upholder.
What does upholdeth mean?
It implies active, constant maintenance. God is perpetually supporting, steadying, and sustaining the righteous. It ensures that even if their earthly resources fail, they have an eternal support system.
Which leads right into the promise of provision in verses 18 and 19.
An extraordinary promise. King James Version, Psalm 37, verses 18 and 19. The Lord knoweth the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied.
This is such a comfort, especially in uncertain times. The promise rests on God's intimate personal knowledge. He knoweth our days.
And because of that intimate knowledge, our security isn't tied to the stock market or a savings account. It's tied to God's infinite, eternal resources.
And the assurance is so specific. Even in evil time, or days of famine, they will be satisfied.
The New Testament reinforces this. Luke chapter 12, verse 7 reminds us that God knows the number of hairs on our head. Our security in a crisis comes from that precise and personal attention.
David then pivots back to practical character, contrasting the selfishness of the wicked with the generosity of the righteous in KJV Psalm 37, verses 21 and 22.
The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous sheweth mercy and giveth. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off.
So the wicked are takers. They use the system, but don't honor their obligations.
While the righteous are characterized by mercy and generosity, they are givers because they know their inheritance is secure.
And that distinction is crucial, isn't it? David is saying that generosity isn't just a good deed, it's a visible expression of profound trust in God's provision.
Exactly. You can afford to give because God is your ultimate source. And this giving attitude is directly linked back to that eternal blessing and inheritance, reinforcing the entire message.
The psalm then turns to God's active guidance and grace in verses 23 and 24, providing assurance even when we fail.
The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand.
This is such a compassionate view of the life of faith. God orders our path, he directs our steps, but he knows we're imperfect. He knows we will stumble.
But the promise is so reassuring. Stumbling or failing is never final. We are not utterly cast down.
This is the promise of sustaining grace.
Yes, Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16 confirms it. A righteous person may fall 7 times, but they will rise again. Why? Because the Lord is actively holding their hand. Our failure is temporary. God's upholding grace is permanent.
David then culminates his whole section with his own powerful personal testimony. It's in King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 25.
I have been young, and now am old. Yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread.
Okay, let's challenge this, because this sounds like an absolute universal promise. Does this mean every single righteous person will always be wealthy, and that their children will never experience poverty?
That is an excellent question, and it requires careful balance. The You Need Faith in Jesus team helps us understand that David is asserting a general principle of God's covenant faithfulness, something he observed over a lifetime.
So it's a testimonial.
A sweeping testimonial of God's loyalty. It doesn't promise absolute immunity from temporal hardship, but it guarantees ultimate, enduring provision and protection. It assures us God will never abandon the righteous to absolute desperation.
So even in hardship, their fundamental needs are cared for and their inheritance is secure.
Right. And he attributes this multi-generational blessing back to character in verse 26. Because the righteous person is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed.
The legacy of faithfulness.
So the practical step here for you is one of contentment and grace. First, find contentment in God's presence, believing that his blessing on a little is superior to the wicked's vast unblessed riches.
And second,
Critically, when you do stumble or fail, immediately turn back to the Lord. Trust the assurance that his hand is there to lift you up, rather than dwelling in despair or self-condemnation.
okay, we're moving now to David's concluding counsel. He's bringing together active obedience, inner integrity, and that assured final destiny.
He starts with a final dual command in King James Version, Psalm 37, verses 27 and 28.
Depart from evil and do good, and dwell forevermore. For the Lord loveth judgment, and forsaketh not his saints. They are preserved forever. But the seed of the wicked shall be cut off.
The motivation for this continuous righteousness is twofold. You get an eternal dwelling and eternal preservation. God's fierce loyalty to his saints is the engine driving our obedience.
And this preservation, it stems from an inward reality, as detailed in verses 30 and 31.
Yes, focusing on the source of wisdom and stability. King James Version, Psalm 37, verses 30 and 31. The mouth of the righteous speaketh wisdom, and his tongue talketh of judgment. The law of God is in his heart. None of his steps shall slide.
This highlights that outward wisdom flows entirely from inward commitment. The key is the law of God is in his heart.
It's an internalization of Scripture, making it your guiding principle, not just an external rulebook. When God's truth is anchored in your heart, it acts as a spiritual ballast.
And that ballast prevents sliding, doesn't it? It gives you stable footing in a chaotic world. When the law is internalized, you don't have to scramble for a moral answer. It just informs your intuition.
Absolutely. The prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 31 about the new covenant describes this exact thing, having God's law written on the heart as the ultimate source of a stable life.
And despite this stability, the opposition continues. Verses 32 and 33 remind us of the active persecution we face, but also of our ultimate defender.
The wicked watcheth the righteous, and seeketh to slay him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand, nor condemn him when he is judged.
God is the ultimate justifier. We may face earthly condemnation, false accusations, but the promise is absolute. God will not allow us to be ultimately condemned.
It aligns perfectly with Romans chapter 8, where Paul asks, "Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? It is God that justifieth. Our defense is secured in heaven."
This assurance brings David to the Psalm's final summation. It's a repeated command in verse 34, and it ties together everything he's been saying.
King James Version, Psalm 37, verse 34. Wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt thee to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it.
This is the culmination of it all. Patient trust plus active, persistent obedience.
Equals guaranteed exaltation and inheritance. And the wicked's end isn't some hypothetical hope. It's a visible, observable certainty. Thou shalt see it, fulfilled in God's perfect timing.
David then brings back his personal observation, reinforcing the temporary nature of worldly power with the final, powerful anecdote in verses 35 and 36.
I have seen the wicked in great power, and spreading himself like a green bay tree. Yet he passed away, and lo, he was not. Yeah, I sought him, but he could not be found.
The green bay tree imagery that denotes something lush, established, seemingly permanent, an archetype of stable, flourishing success.
Yes. David saw a man who had everything, power, status, longevity, but his testimony confirms that this seemingly permanent fixture just vanished so completely he couldn't even find the place where he had been.
The contrast is deliberately dramatic. The righteous may feel small, but they endure forever. The wicked may appear massive, but they're gone without a trace.
That's the profound truth that should curb any temptation to envy.
And the final contrasting outcomes are assured in KJV Psalm 37, verses 37 and 38.
Mark the perfect man, and behold the upright. For the end of that man is peace. But the transgressors shall be destroyed together. The end of the wicked shall be cut off.
The ultimate destiny of a life lived in integrity is shalom, absolute peace, wholeness, security.
A destiny utterly opposite to the destruction guaranteed for the transgressor. And David concludes, finally, by rooting all security, salvation, and strength firmly in God alone. He ensures we understand the singular source of our confidence in the final two verses, 39 and 40.
But the salvation of the righteous is of the Lord. He is their strength in the time of trouble, and the Lord shall help them and deliver them. He shall deliver them from the wicked and save them because they trust in him.
The entire system rests on trust. Our safety is not derived from our own strength or our performance, but entirely from the Lord because we have chosen to rely on him. The You Need Faith in Jesus team emphasizes this as the foundation of all theology. Our security is anchored not in what we do, but in the character of the God we trust.
So the final practical step is a commitment to internalization.
Yes.
Daily dedicate time to having the law of God written on your heart. Read Scripture, meditate on these verses, and let His truth guide your words and your steps. This internal anchor is the only guarantee of stability and wisdom in an unstable world.
That's it, exactly.
This exploration of Psalm 37, informed by the deep analysis of the You Need Faith in Jesus team, has been an immense instruction on trust. David's counsel is crystal clear. Choose delight and rest over fretting and striving.
Choose surrender over control.
And choose the certainty of God's eternal preservation over the temporary appearance of injustice.
The knowledge imparted here really reinforces the radical nature of trust. We are called to stop comparing our quiet faithfulness to the flashy, shallow success of the world. Our security is in God's unchanging character, and that security guarantees a peace and an inheritance that no earthly success can ever match.
So, as you move forward into the rest of your week, reflect on David's final imagery. Consider the modern equivalent of that green bay tree, that seemingly flourishing, ungodly success you may envy. Remember how quickly it vanishes. Then, consider what small, deliberate act of faith you can take today, perhaps committing a long-held worry to the Lord, or choosing to show mercy instead of retaliation, to deepen your absolute delight in Him.
To solidify your understanding of this lesson, be sure to use the flashcards to review P terms and then take the quiz. Passing the quiz will mark this lesson as complete.